Hi, today I am making my bourbon butterscotch pie. It is something I came up with for Thanksgiving. I love this recipe. I love a really sweet pie. I'm definitely the type of person that prefers a sweet pie versus a fruit pie. I know there's a lot of apple pie lovers out there, but I will take bourbon butterscotch over that any day. I love this recipe because you can make it a day ahead of time. You serve it chilled. You just keep this pie in your fridge until you're ready to serve it. It's not going to need any space in your oven on Thanksgiving, which I know can be a big problem. I know at my house it's like things are coming in and out of the oven all day long, and you don't have to worry about that with this pie. The other thing I love about it is it uses a really simple recipe for homemade pie crust. This was I believe my great-grandmother's recipe. It's been handed down through the generations. It's for a shortbread crust. This is actually the same pie crust my mom uses for her pumpkin pie. So if you were to do pumpkin pie and then bourbon butterscotch pie, you could just make a double batch of this crust and it would save you a lot of time. So let's get started on the pie crust. I have just melted a cup and a half of butter. You don't need to get it bubbling, like just slowly melt it. And then here I have, there's a tablespoon of powdered sugar, a quarter cup of granulated sugar, and 2 cups of flour. So all you do for this recipe, it's so easy, you just mix that all together. So I'm going to do that with a spatula. And this is a press it, like you just press it into the pie crust, or into the pie pan rather. So this does call for a 10-inch pie pan, so it makes a lot. And I always recommend buying a 10-inch pie pan because the more pie, the better, right? All right, so I'm just mixing. This is looking really good. This is just the easiest recipe, and I love that it's a shortbread. It's a buttery shortbread pie crust, and it can go with a wide variety of pies. I don't know if I would do it with with apple, but I would definitely do it with any sort of sweet, like chocolate. Pecan pie would be really good with this. So easy to make. Okay, so you just kind of mix it around until it is a consistent color. So I'm going to pour it into this pie crust right here. This pie pan, rather. And then you just press it in. It's really simple. So slowly, I like to start in the center. So the trick is that you want to press this out so it's a consistent thickness throughout. And where it will want to be too thick, if I've done this in the past, right on the edges here, you just want to go along the edges and make sure it's not going to be too thick. I press it all out and then I worry about making it pretty at the end. And I always save just a little bit back in the bowl, so that way you can kind of use extra around the edges to make it pretty at the very end. So press it in the middle, press it down the edges. See, this is really simple. It doesn't have to look totally pretty on the bottom because no one's going to see that. There we go. So this took me no time at all. It's a great pie crust recipe, and you don't have to roll it out. There's no mess. I didn't just get flour all over my kitchen, which I promise I would do if I was making a different recipe. It's just so crazy to do that. If I'm going to use a pie crust you need to roll, I'm going to buy it at the grocery store. All right, there we go. I'm going to work a little bit to make this pretty, and then we'll get going on the butterscotch filling. Okay, so my pie crust is ready. I just cooked it until it was slightly brown. It took just about 15 minutes, and now I'm going to get to work on the bourbon butterscotch filling. This is like a thick pudding filling, and I love it. It's so good. So you start with just 2/3 cup of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and I just put that into this saucepan here. I'm just whisking it together until it's all the clumps are out of the brown sugar. That's easy enough. Just crushing the big clumps. All right. And now I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of half and half. And then I'm just gonna grab like a little pinch of salt here. Okay, I'm gonna whisk this together just until it's a nice even consistency. And then I'm gonna bring it over to the stove where I am going to bring it to a bubble. So hold tight. So here I am heating this over low heat. This is that same mixture of cornstarch, brown sugar, and half and half with a little bit of salt. So I just have it over like a medium low heat. You don't want to heat this up too quickly. And right away, you want to add the remaining half and half. There's 1 more cup of half and half that you need to whisk into this. There you go. And then right away, again, you want to whisk in your egg yolk. You want to do this right away before this heats up because you could risk accidentally adding scrambled eggs into your bourbon butterscotch if you didn't do this right away. So I'm just going to whisk this in. And that way you avoid having to temper your eggs, which is the process of slowly heating the egg by adding a little bit of the warm sauce back and forth. It's just an easier way to accomplish the same task. So now I'm just going to keep whisking. You want this to be really smooth. Like you want a smooth, creamy butterscotch pudding in the middle of this pie. So I'm going to whisk, and this will thicken up pretty quickly as soon as it starts to boil. Cornstarch is a thickening agent, and we put 2 tablespoons of that in there. So this will become a really nice thick pie. So right now, I'm just going to whisk and whisk and whisk, and once this comes to a boil, we're going to want it to slowly bubble and boil for 3 minutes, letting it become nice and thick. So sit tight, and I'm going to work on that. So if you can hear that, this is coming to a boil. It is really important to keep whisking during this point in the process because this is when little clumps are going to want to form. So keep whisking. I'm going to turn down the heat just a touch. You want like a slow and steady bubble. You don't need it to be like feverishly bubbling here. All right, and then I'm going to add the whiskey now, and I do this for a really specific point. I want the alcohol to cook out. I am 31. Most of my friends are having babies, and I like to serve things that anyone can enjoy. And if I add it now, it will get most of the alcohol out of there. So I use 4 roses. I'm going to add this right now and then explain why I'm doing it. Why I picked 4 roses. All right, this is going really well. Okay, so I add about 1, 2, just about 3 shots in there. Okay, and I picked 4 roses because I think a rye bourbon is a little bit too strong. It doesn't complement. I think it would compete. The flavors would compete a little bit. So I like a really nice straight bourbon. At one point, I did have my husband and his friend do a taste test, and they thought that 4 roses was a really great pick for something to go with sweet desserts. So I've just been using that consistently ever since. It's a nice price point. It has a great flavor. And it works really well in this particular recipe as well. Okay, so right now, adding that in, and this has just about another 2 minutes to go before I finish this up. Okay, so I let this go for another 2 minutes. Right now, this is really nice, smooth, thick consistency. It's going to thicken up as it cools, though. So I would say this is a little bit thinner than like a Jell-O pudding before you chill it, but it is going to set up. So now you just finish it off. This is 3 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to whisk that in, and then you add your vanilla. And I always use a really high quality vanilla extract. All right, so I'm just going to whisk that in. Butter's melting really quickly. And then I'm going to pour this into the pie crust. Really simple, really easy. This is a really fun pie to make if you're having guests over. My friends are definitely more pie people than they are cake people. And they've made that very clear to me time and time again. Anytime they come over and I'm like, oh, should I make a cake or pie? And they say, they always want pie. And I think pie is really fun. I think it's very, there's something traditionally American about it. I think that pie is so linked to people's family and their family histories. Like, I love that I took my great-grandmother's recipe and kind of modernized it a little bit. I'm going to grab my lobster curl so I can hold this pie crust over here because it's still a little hot. Okay, and then I'm just going to pour this in really quickly. See, look at that. It's just beautiful. I love the color, and I wish you could smell this because it is so, so fragrant. It is just amazing. All right, well, I'm going to scrape down the sides and make this all nice and neat. And then this is going to get plopped into the fridge for 3.5 hours. You could, do this a day ahead of time. Totally up to you, but just make sure it has at least 3.5 hours to set up and become really nice and thick. And then I make just a little bit of whipped cream. I just take whipping cream, a little bit of vanilla again, whip that up and put that on top. Fresh whipped cream. It's homemade. It's so easy to prepare, and it really makes a huge difference. It's so much better than anything that comes in those cans. So I definitely recommend making that instead of just getting the store-bought canister. But I hope that you like this recipe, and I think that you should definitely test it out and maybe add it to your Thanksgiving menu.